This is my very first time, and I went and had discussions with a pre-conference call for about 2 hours.
Well, welcome, Chief.
Hey.
Welcome.
Yes, thank you so much. Can y'all hold just 1 second? I got to check something here. I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back.
Okay. Robin?
Yeah. This is Robert here, too.
All right. Do we want to wait a few more minutes for other people, or do we want to start talking? What would y'all like to do?
Hey, Chief Jones, this is Ella. If you would like me to assist you in any way, just let me know.
Yes. In fact, I was trying to figure out how to get a hold of you and let you be a host on here to help me out.
Yeah,
I'm not sure how to do it.
I don't have a lot of time, but I would love to do that. I would like to train you. I can spend oh goodness, hold on, there's a dog in here near my cat. Hold on a second. Anyways, I would love to help you. It would be my honor.
Yes.
It won't be as hard as you think, but it's not as easy as you want. That's for sure. And I guess free conference call. The free conference call has some changes, as you notice. There's some updates. Hold on just a second. But you know what? I'll commit to a month and then just push it. Well, I'll help you for the next month. Hold on 1 second. Come on, puppy. Out. Come on. Hold on 1 second. Hey, guys.
Yeah.
My name is Christine Swanson.
Hey, Christine.
Hey.
Chief Jones here. I'm trying to get everything figured out so I do it the right way.
So, Chief Jones, nobody will help you do all those. Like, we can set it up. Like, maybe I'll call you tomorrow. I know you have stuff that you got to do, but we can set it up where it won't make the dinging all the time. We can make it more personalized for you. And because I tell you that ringing, the dinging gets a little annoying after a while.
Yes,
it's interrupted, really. Yeah, no problem.
Yes, if I can figure out how to do it, I'll sure do it.
Okay, I'll help you with all that. I'll log on to see your board. Hold on. What is your meeting ID? Do you know what that is? Like, it might be like Chief Jones or something that you signed up with.
My meeting ID is Daymond 4040, then the number 8. Daymond 4048.
Rich S.J. here.
Well, then someone interrupted. Hold on. So Daymond 40408, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, let's see. I'm going to go on.
I apologize for that.
Oh, no worries.
No problem.
Okay. And then, are you on your desktop or laptop? Phone or desktop? Okay.
I'm talking on the phone, but I got the desktop up and running.
Are you using the app or are you using the website?
I think it's the app, but I'm not positive.
Like, is it an icon on your computer, or is it?
Yes.
Did you go to? It is. Okay, that's the app. Okay. I'm gonna go to my app then. Okay, I'm pulling it up.
Okay.
And then you should see like a list. Hold on, look at it showing. Uh-oh. Okay, so, do you have it like you have it large enough to where you can see that it's just a blue box and there's a column on the right-hand side, right?
Right, I mean, it's got a menu, online meetings, meeting wall, all that's at the top.
Oh, you might be on website. Hold on. Okay, is there a row at the bottom that says mute, audio, video, share, record? It's just all in the bottom there?
No.
Okay, so you are actually maybe using online. Because when you say meeting wall, let me see if I can get there from the app.
Ella, this is Heather. Do you know we can hear you?
Yeah, I'm trying to help him.
Okay. No, I thought maybe you didn't know you were on live. Okay, I know you are.
I'm just trying to help him, that's all. Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Thanks, Tom. But do you see where, do you see a list of attendees?
I think that's on yes, that's participant 51 right now.
Okay, so you only see one. Okay, so you must be on, because I know there's more than one person on this call, so,
Yes, it's 51.
Oh, 51. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, goodness. Okay, so then I would just say to everybody, if you have background noise and you're not talking, go ahead and mute yourself either by *6 or muting your handset, because I can hear a lot of background noise. And you have quite a few callers for the first time ever. I think my first call I had 6 people, and it was 51 is a lot to manage for a first-time call. So we just have to ask them to kind of help out a little bit with the background noise.
Yes, that would be great.
Yeah, and then tomorrow I'll call and talk to you maybe for now, and we'll kind of work out some of the kinks and everything.
Oh, that'll be fine. I mean, I'm going to try and do this again next week and then see what people want to do from that point forward. You know,
okay.
and how to go and help as many people as possible.
Okay.
I would just like to get the chief's email so I can email them.
That is Daymond, DAYMOND, 4040
Okay, Chief, are you there? This is Derek. You might want to mute the call. There's a lot of noise. Do you know how to mute the call?
Up there where it says muted.
There's 3 mute options. You want to start with the one at the top.
Okay. Okay, there we went. So I muted everybody, so they have to unmute themselves at this point.
Right, exactly. So that would eliminate a lot of the noise.
Okay, well, thank you so much. Let me say that this is September the 25th, 2019. It's 8:13 p.m. Central Time, whatever that makes it your time. And I thank everybody for coming. And I want to use this as a general meet and greet and just to say who I am and what I think I might be able to do for various people in various cases. And this is not a all-exhaustive type of meeting. You know, it would probably take me quite some time to tell people lots of things I know. So I'll have to start off by saying my name is Daymond Ray Jones, DaymondRayJones. Most people can figure out from listening to me, I'm an older white guy, if that matters to anybody. I'm a Christian by birth, and I was raised up in the Christian church, and I become ordained in 92 or 93. I have a hard time remembering the exact date. And I've been in police work and law enforcement since I was 14 years old. And some people may say, no, you can't be a policeman until you're 18 or 21. Well, that's true depending on the state. But in my case, I was an ROTC in high school, and I began in the 9th grade when I was 14 as a Dallas Police Explorer Cadet. Some people call them junior cadets, but it's an official program, the Dallas Police Department. We wore uniforms, and we assisted the officers in every aspect. So when you come in, you rode an 8-hour shift, you and one officer. So every call he went to, everything he did, you did. And once you were around a few months and you really they could fill you out and know who you was, then I was actually writing out citations and writing out reports. And then they would proofread it. If there was any errors, they would circle and say, fix this or that. I would fix it. Then they would read it, and then they would sign their name to it. And I got really good at this within 6 months, and I rode a lot of Friday and Saturday nights and on holidays, and the officers got to the point that for somebody 14, I was almost 6 foot tall and about 200 pounds. And most people took me as an adult man, and they seen that. And people would come talking to me about situations like I was another peace officer. So they started telling me, hey, I'm going to give you a backup gun, put it inside your waistband and secure it. Don't tell nobody you have it. Don't never, ever pull it unless we're down to a life-threatening situation, because I'll have to answer for it. And it could mean my job or going to jail or other things. So I considered myself one of them. Maybe I should have, maybe I shouldn't have, but I did. And so I got to do things that all the other cadets and other people didn't do, because I really applied myself as an eager beaver to learn, and I wanted to know everything. So that's how I started out. Then 4 years later, when I graduated high school, when I actually graduated early, then my great uncle was an elected constable. And I went to work for him, and he gave me the rank of captain and named me as his chief deputy. Now, not that it was some large department, and he mainly had a handful of deputies, and so, I came and went as I wanted. It was not a paid job, but it was getting my foot in the door and helping me. And so when I was 21, which was 3 years later, then I went to my first full-time law enforcement job, and I had been working there for about a year. When I went to work there, I'd been working for, in this full-time position, plus my other law enforcement I'd been doing about 4.5 years. I'd been out there before I ever went to a police academy. That's just unheard of, but it's just how it happened to me. And from there, I actually served on many occasions. The chief of police would leave on a Thursday or Friday, and the mayor would swear me in as the acting chief of police, which was incredible. I'm 21 years of age. I haven't even been to a police academy, but they know I got my head screwed on straight, and they were appointing me. And if the chief took a week-long vacation, they were to appoint me as the chief of police. About 6 months later, I went to my first academy, and I continued on in the law enforcement field doing numerous things. And in 96, I become a chief of police of the city of Midway, Florida. I had been the assistant chief and acting chief numerous times off and on between probably 91 and 96. And then in 96, when I was made the chief of police, and at the very end of that year, I had 6 months of comp time, and then I had annual time, sick time, all this stuff, and it was a big political theater. So the long story short is I retired. And I think that was coming into April or May of '97 when my time ran out, and then I retired as the chief of police. I continued my law enforcement career on, and in 2003, I was hired by the city council and appointed as the chief of police in Alpha, Florida. 2 years later, I retired at the rank of colonel, assistant chief of police. I worked at some county jails for a little bit, and I just wanted to get out of my police work and maybe do something different. And I did everything from do some security jobs to pick up trash for a trash company, help people do all kinds of admin jobs just because I just really need a break. But I found out Leon County Sheriff's Office in Tallahassee, Florida was hiring dual certified law enforcement officers, correctional officers. So I went there. I went there in 2005. And I went to work with them in 2005. And in late 2007, I had a line of duty injury stopping a homicide in progress. So they gave me an administrative line of duty retirement. That's an administrative thing. It ain't like I went in and said I retired. They decided that I didn't, at that moment, have the essential ability to fulfill all the duties of a law enforcement officer, so it's a medical retirement. And I argued with them about it because I wanted to work, but again, this was politics. And the sheriff and me was having some disagreements. So it didn't look bad on me. In fact, it looked good, you know, that I stopped a homicide and I got retired because I got injured stopping that. So I retired then. Then I come to Alabama and work for a local DPS unit, Department of Public Safety, for approximately 2 years. Then I was driving a truck over the road, which I'd done off and on for many years. And then I went to the Coffee County, which is Enterprise, Alabama, the Coffee County Constable's Office, and I was hired in at the chief deputy / chief of staff at the rank of major. And last year, in January or February, I have to look back, then I retired at the rank of colonel, chief deputy constable. And at that time is probably the first time I even heard or began to have a faint understanding of TIs without knowing that there was actually any organizations, there were actually real perpetrators and victims. I'd known all my life about the CIA and military and special operations that they run because of my dad and other people he associated with, because him being in the Marine Corps and having special assignments at the State Department, at the White House and other places in the late 50s and early 60s. You know, he was a self-educated man. And he would tell me things and said, you know, we have a lot of weapons and special technology that we use in warfare against other countries. So I knew, without knowing exactly, without him ever saying what that was, I knew we had some special weapons. And they were to be used against against the foreign enemy. And they were specifically under laws that they could never be used against American citizens, even if the American citizen was on foreign soil, unless they were declared an enemy combatant or other classification, and that would require the most senior staff. So you'd be talking about a Secretary of State, the Vice President, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, somebody at that level would have to bring the information, that the information would have to be gathered before they would list them that way. And that theoretically, not actually, but theoretically is the way it works. The CIA calls people and weaponry, anything they can use, they call it an asset. They'll say, we have assets in Guam. Okay, well, that could be anything. They may need to have ammunition there, nothing else. They have a small militia there. They have telecommunications there. It could mean anything. So that has to be broke down. So I've always known about those things, but I didn't realize that, the microwaves, the ultra low frequencies, the lasers, there's way too many things to list. And only the human mind is limited to its imagination, because inventors and scientists and people that's in certain places in government have access to things, and if they don't exist, certain people in certain positions can say, hey, I had a thought about this. And they take it to scientists and engineers, and they say, well, nothing like that exactly exists, something similar. No, I really want this. And depending on who they are, if they get it and put it in a black ops projects, which is actually the senior people in Congress and the Senate and the president know, without knowing real specific, they know in general certain off-the-books black projects, and I know at least billions of dollars every year go into it. I don't know if it goes into the trillions, but it goes into the many billions, 30, 40 billion, 50 billion, and this is where they do like space-time travel. They study human beings, they study animals, they study everything. And I've made me a little list here, because the most frequently asked question is more definitively who I am. So I tried to answer that up front. And they asked me, how can you help me? Well, initially, I was listening to people. They were sending me emails, and a few people called me, so I listened to them. And many of them said, just by you simply listening to me and not criticizing me and not judging me and not saying I'm a fruitcake or a nut job, I appreciate that. And I feel better just that you are who you are and you listen. I think about what they're saying, and I clarify with them different things, and I try and analyze from a law enforcement officer point of view. I'm saying, if I come to this conclusion based on what you told me, this is probably what way over 90% of most cops are going to come to the same conclusion. And if it ain't, it's going to be very similar. And so I was barraged by, way in excess of 400 emails. Once things got to rolling along a little bit, I had done a call with Derek, and I probably got 20 or 30 emails. That was easy to manage, and I probably talked to 5 or 6 people. That was easy to manage. Then I did something with Romola D, and there was, the emails went up a little bit more phone calls, more emails. I did another one with her. Then I did one with Miss Ella. And so over time, people kept talking to each other in the community, one thing and another, and I was specifically helping a few TIs very hands-on and reaching out and tapping my sources and resources, the people I have in the background that don't want to be identified because they're not targets, and they don't want to be targets, and they don't want their family to be targets. So I have encrypted means to communicate with them, and sometimes I have to drive to where they are. So we have off-grid, off-reservation conversations. And if I need something, I ask him for it. There are some things that may be at too high a level that maybe my current sources and resources don't have security clearances to get to, but other things they do. So it depends on what it is. And I've been contacted by some people that have worked in this field for 10 plus years, some of them 20 plus years, and probably if I said their name, people would jump out of their seat and say, yeah, I know him or her. Okay, I'm in a non-disclosure agreement with my sources and resources not to use their names. I can tell about them. I can tell maybe their expertise, and I can say, hey, they're on my team. But I can't put their name out there because they don't want to become a target themselves. And they don't want their family and friends. Some of them currently are working, some are retired. They would probably lose their livelihoods and other bad things. So they said, we'll help you, but, we can't do this for free. And so if somebody comes to me, I'm retired, okay? I've got certain health issues through my law enforcement work. And my wife was disabled by a horrific accident. So she functions, she's okay, but she can't work no more. My son has special needs. He has autism, development delay, and other things. So my hands are usually pretty full dealing with a few of my own issues, and they're more serious issues. So most of my days stay up with that. So I have to cut time out of my day or out of many days to do things for people. So I talked to my wife. I talked to a few select TIs that I had been talking to for a few months or longer. I talked to my sources and resources, and they all kind of come up with the same idea, but various amounts of money. So I come up with the $25 donation, because if somebody can't do a $25 donation and send me an email so I can read over it and see what's going on in their life and look at it and be ready when I get on the phone with them and say, I'm verifying a few things, and if there's anything else you want to tell me or any specific help you want to know if I can do, this is your half hour. And that's less than $1 a minute. Most people that do anything in their own discipline, they're starting at $100 to $300 an hour just to talk on the phone. So I thought I'd make it low and simple, because I felt like if people had already spent hundreds or thousands or many thousands of dollars to shield themselves, to go get experts, attorneys, private investigators, if they can't do a penance of $25 donation and me read their email and talk to them for half an hour where they've got my 100% complete undivided attention and it's 100% confidential, then that tells me that they're not serious, in my opinion. Okay, maybe in their opinion they're very serious. But if they can't do that, because I know several people that are homeless, some by decision, some because of circumstances. So whether it's political, religious, environment, they're homeless. And I've even talked to some of them, and I said, hey, if you really needed something, could you get $25 to donate to something if you really needed it? Of course. So that's when I made my final decision, at the $25. So that's where I stand on that. And then once that's done, if the man or woman said, hey, I'm going to need some PIs to do different things, private investigators. I'm going to need certain type of radio engineers. I'm going to need some sort of doctors for this and that. Then I say, okay, well, once they've done the donation and they talk to me, I'm not going to quote at 30 minutes of your time's up, you got to get off. If we're still discussing something, we'll finish it out. So that's not a hard and fast 30 minutes. That's just a general rule. But if they still got some questions, we're still hashing stuff out, and we wind up 45 minutes or an hour later we're talking, that's okay. It's just a general guide. And say they won't need all these things, then I'll say, well, give me a day or two, and I'll start calling people, and I'll start looking up what would this cost, what would that cost. And I'll do them a general all-in-all cost, and I'll try and break it down to variables, but that takes time too. So I can probably find out in an hour's time what all they need, what all it would require, and some time limits and constraints. And I'd give them a dollar price, and I'd give some general breakdown, but I can't sit and do a real super itemized thing, and then I give that back to them. And if they say, hey, that's too much, what can I do similar to this for about half the price? Then I'd say, okay, this is what you can do for about half the prices. And then, if you want to actually hire me or make a donation for me to actually go in and can cause this stuff to happen, then that's okay, and I'll do it. If you say, I just like the facts and information you gave me, I gave a $25 donation, you listened to me, you gave me some ideas, that's certainly well worth a lot more than $25, and you actually gave me some facts and figures and information, and I don't want to do nothing now, but I know better how to go about it. Okay, that's fine. So if that $25 got you satisfied and everything's okay, that's a very inexpensive price for an honest, open-minded man to look at your situation and say, hey, you've done the best you can. Now I want to move on to truths and myths. For some reason, there is a big, gigantic belief in the TI community that all or most cops or certain high-level cops know all about targeted individuals. I can tell you I spent 40 years in this, and I never heard of this group, this community, in all them years. I never had any man or woman ever come up and report to me, I'm a targeted individual. Now, they may have said other words that might have amounted to it, but not in the sense of electronic harassment, coercion, microwaves, ultra-low frequencies, whatever it might be, a particle beam, etc. I've never had nobody tell me that. I've never had another officer in all the cases they talked about say, hey, they talk about unusual cases to each other, but I've never heard this come up. It was only once I actually got retired that I said, that means our outward ears have turned inward, and warfare stuff is supposed to be used against foreign nationals that are at war with us, that they're using some of these tactics and try to do it against a certain select number of people for whatever their reasons are. But I also found out that individuals that are pretty well-to-do, they don't have to be super wealthy, just pretty well-to-do, can afford a lot of this electronic gear and apparatus from various vendors here around the world. And corporations certainly can buy these things. So that's when I kind of dug down into it. Then I started talking to police from the 5 states I worked in, being Texas, Oklahoma, Florida, Alabama, and Tennessee. I talked to cops I know in these 5 states because I actually worked there. And I'd ask them, hey, what kind of training have you got on targeted individuals? And
I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but what 5 states did you say you talk with people?
what states?
You just said like 5. You just have like 5 different
Yes.
states. I totally missed that. Could you tell me like what
what did you say before that? I just want to make sure I got all my notes.
I said in Texas, Oklahoma, Florida, Alabama, and Tennessee. That's where I solicited my information from law enforcement personnel, from the local level to the federal level, because I knew these men and women personally. So I could approach them and talk to them without creating any big, well, Chief Jones going around interviewing people all over the United States about law enforcement matters and, you know, bells and whistles go off. So I talked to people I knew. These people, I asked them, do you know the term TI? Well, especially in Texas, they said, yeah, that's Texas Instruments, TI. No, means, have you heard the term TI referred to as targeted individual? No, what's that? And I give them a broad-based description of victims of electronic harassment and or other types of harassment that's involved. Never heard of that. You know, how many people's in that? Well, you know, I don't know. It's kind of like trying to count the stars at night. You know, there's the stars you see and there's the stars you don't see. I said, I'm told in the United States, within the continental United States, I'm not adding Alaska and Hawaii in that count. I said, I'm told a rough number of 100,000. I said, this could be true, it could not be true. And when I talked to some current and retired chiefs of police I know, they said, well, you know that a lot of these people are insane. And I would shoot back and say, no, I don't know that. I know they might be diagnosed that way, but if they are a targeted individual, that's a setup. So then they're not. Or the actors that have acted against them have caused them to become that way. So they've been damaged to the point that they have less mental capacity or diminished capacity to some extent. So we need to keep that in mind. I said, now, I'm a reasonable and I'm a logical man. And I don't say that there are not people that are mentally deficient from birth or a car wreck or other things that might not have delusions or illusions of things that are not correct. I'm sure that's out there. There are people that because they seem panicked or in overdrive all the time, then people draw the wrong conclusion about them, and they're not a licensed medical professional, so they're drawing a layman's opinion based on their perception. Perception equals reality. So I couldn't find anybody out of all those cops I talked to. I couldn't find anybody that knew what TI stood for or understood targeted individuals or targeted people, you know, any terminology at all. Yeah.
Chief, I'd like to suggest a different term that they would recognize, because many of our, I don't know if you can hear me okay, many of our community will go to police and report that they're hearing voices, which is the V2K. So those are the ones that police will respond, either come to our door and haul us to the psych ward, or deem us to be, you know, have mental issues or be crazy. Okay, that's one. So your terminology comes from the community, but it needs to be from law enforcement terminology, which is very different. Because when the TI comes through the police and says he's hearing voices, those are the ones that get deemed, you know, and hauled off to the ward and deemed crazy or whatever. And that's one. And the other thing I want to say is that The gentleman that did respond to you in the affirmative, saying that it sounded like he believes some are crazy, that gentleman knew. I can tell you that gentleman knew. And that's all I want to say. Thank you.
Okay. Hey, Chief, this is Derek.
Yes.
If you would like to speak uninterrupted, where the mute button is, you click the Q&A, and that will keep everyone muted.
Okay. Okay. So, here I go. Anyway, to answer her question, I'm basically saying I have used my own personal interpretation and terminology. I've used medical terminology. I've used PI community language. So I've approached things from multi-levels so as if I'm talking to a police officer, I've actually circled him psychologically 360 degrees. I'm doing nothing but trying to extract or harvest information from him that will be a benefit to me, that will be benefit to the TI community. And they don't know. They were the same as me. They never heard of it. They don't know. Now, I will go on record here saying that I have been told multiple times from targets and some of my sources that the city of New York City has certain military-grade weaponry, and that come about because of the terrorist attacks, the 9/11 attacks. And so the military, Homeland Defense, FBI, CIA, all sorts of people come in there over a period of some years and brought a lot of weapons and apparatus in there because in a lot of religious beliefs for various people in the United States around the world, New York City is the that's the goalpost. You know, if you disrupt New York City, if you hit it financially, physically, otherwise, then the whole country suffers. They kind of see New York City based on their religion, political views, other things, that's the head of the dinosaur or the head of the monster. So a lot of people want to attack that. So they brought a lot of assets and resources in there that they already had in Washington, D.C., and have had in there probably since the 1960s, early 1960s or before. But of course, it's been upgraded numerous times. They brought some of those assets in there. As far as your average, ordinary, even large city, I don't know that they have this. Now, there are probably, I'm just going to guess, maybe 50 departments, whether it's state police, city police, county police, federal police, that have these Stingray cell towers that they can actually mobily move around in a van or other places and intercept calls coming in and out because it tricks your phone into thinking it's the cell tower, and they gain a lot of information. And the Supreme Court, good or bad, and I think it's bad, said when something goes through the air, a signal or a wave, if you merely have a receiver that can discern those invisible waves, such as a scanner or anything else, you can listen to what's out there. And so if the police are basically using a TV, as it were, that picks up an over-the-air signal that's for phones instead of TV or radio. And so if they gain information off of that, that's fine. But the American Civil Liberties Union and some various attorneys I've talked to said, but we're working on some certain class action lawsuits that say if they can get it without creating the false illusion that they're a real cell tower. So they're not just getting it out of the air, they're creating something to get it out of the air that's not normal. So they have an unfair advantage and they violate people's privacy constantly. So let me just roll on through this real fast and I'll try and answer what I can. 911 call is recorded. Now, there's a good and bad in that. Your tone of voice, the exact words you say, they're all recorded, time, dated, and stamped. So call 911, they have to respond. The law requires them to respond. The law doesn't require them to do anything once they get there based on every law I've ever read or heard about. It just requires them to physically show up to the location of the call or where they're told to go. Once they get there, the response may go bad, and a lot of times it does go bad. So you might call because your house was broke into, and when they leave, they could leave with you for filing a false report on the burglary saying, no, we think you did it. So you could be the victim of a burglary than the victim of bad cops. So you get dinged twice. And then you got to spend money or take the public defender that we call the public pretender. Anyway, that's just how it is. And now some people call the non-emergency, non-911 call, which could or could not be recorded. They're not required to tell you it's being recorded because it's for a law enforcement purpose. So keep in mind it could be. The officer may respond or may not respond on that. And that response may also go fine or it may go bad. Now to the next point, gathering facts. We're not all Sergeant Joe Friday from Dragnet. However, basically the average cop, there are some that's above the average and some below. But I'm going to say the lion's majority believe in gathering facts, not suspicions, not accusations. Cops look at facts, especially when it gets to an investigative stage, they're hardcore. So what are the facts that cops look for? i.e., in essence, medical reports of every type, audio files, video files, photos, sworn statements by you, sworn statements by other disinterested third party, but they're a first-hand account of events. Now, that doesn't mean if your wife or husband or relative seen it, they're still a third party, so that's fine, but it's still a sworn statement by a first-hand account of an event by the actual eye or ear witness. Anything that is left behind from a perpetrator. So if somebody's out beating on your window and they left their mask, they lost a shoe, they forgot something out of their backpack, then that's evidence. They also look at FOIA, Freedom of Information, the Freedom of Information Act, and these are records from the CIA, the military, federal police, NASA, whomever, but they're on a federal agency. They also look at open state records. So all the states have some sort of laws on meetings and other records. So you have to look at your state to get the specific state statute, code, rule, or regulation on getting records. But that's other things they look at. Police, especially on the federal level, but not necessarily, look at a SAR report, which is suspicious activity reports. Now, those come a lot of times from banks and financial institutions, but they can also be created by Department of Homeland Security agents or other individuals. So a police officer out on the street can start a SAR report. And sometimes you wouldn't believe how tiny, like you got a small town that's got 3 or 5 or 8 cops, and it's 2 o'clock in the morning, and he's bored out of his mind, or she is, and they see anything that they think is suspicious, and they have the knowledge or the ability or the forms to start a SAR report. If they have any training on that, they know how to do it, they may submit one in, and it gets sent over to the Fusion Center. So the Fusion Center looks at it, at least gives it a once-over and say, damn, that man must just have been bored to death to write this. This is a no-nothing. And so they scan it, and they log it, unfounded, unmerited. But they still have the basic information if it should ever be useful tomorrow or 10 years down the road. And they usually log these SARs as active or inactive, meaning if something's active, it looks like there's some merit to it. It looks like it's going somewhere. We're not guaranteed it's going to go anywhere, but it looks like it's going to require more investigation, some more assets and resources to get to the bottom of this. Probably over 90% that come in, they say, this is unverifiable. At this time, it doesn't have merit. At this time, it doesn't have any red flags. It just says it's unusual, so we're going to put it in the inactive. But all the names and information can be cross-indexed from that day forward. So I'd say 90% or more just sit over there. But and most of the ones that are done are by people that's suspected to be terrorist cells or in banking. Those are the most often checked upon. Or say even some gun stores, maybe they know the local cops around there and they get along with them good. And they say, we've had a guy that's been in here 10 times this month buying a lot of guns and a lot of ammunition. And, the ATF background check says he's okay. And he don't act unusual. That's the only suspicious thing if he buys a lot, which doesn't mean it's suspicion in of itself. But the cops, they go ahead because they say, and they're nosy. So they go ahead and they look at his name, they run a background check, they decide, if it warrants further investigation or an SAR, Suspicious Activities Report, to go to the Fusion Center or elsewhere. So be aware of those things. Now, if at some point, if you do the donation, you do send me an email, and I analyze it, read it, and think about it before I call you, and you say, look, I need a law enforcement officer practitioner's opinion. Okay, attorneys give opinions. Judges give opinions. Doctors give opinions. If you're a day spa or day salon and you're licensed in that area and you worked in that area for 10 or 15 years and you need an expert on toenails or pedicures or other things, they could write you out a practitioner's opinion because they're an expert in that area. They've been licensed, trained, and they've actually done it hands-on. I'm just going to the far other end. But in law enforcement, I've been to probably 3 or 4 different academies for different things over the years. I've been to a full-time academy in Texas twice. That's a long story when it's irrelevant. Well, it might not be irrelevant. I'll just tell you, you have to make 90% or more of your time, and because while I was working and going to the academy at the same time, they called me out on some investigations, and I wound up doing like 86 or 87% of the course, and because I was a few hours short, they wouldn't let me pass, so I had to recycle and go back through the entire thing all over. Okay, so anyway, I went through there twice. And then I went through a reserve academy in Florida when I very first got there. Then about 3 or 4 months later, I went through a full-time academy there. Then I went through a full-time correctional officers academy later on. And in Texas, I went through basic security and armed guard security. In Florida, I was exempt because of my law enforcement credentials, but I did get security officer, armed security officer license, concealed weapon permits, and then I got my investigator license. And then I've gone to what they call in-service training. Even though you got 2 years or 4 years to do certain things, depending on the state and the rules, I've gone every single year for mandatory retraining, and I far exceeded anything that I had to have, by far. Then I did a lot of self-discipline studies where I would go to the law library and spend hours there. And I had carte blanche to go to the attorneys section because I knew several attorneys, and I was either considered their guest or a regular patron, and so they always allowed me to access that area that most people don't get to go to. So I would cross-reference things back before computers come up, and it would take tedious hours to find cases, read them, and comprehend them. So the basic, best thing I can tell you is general facts and information I know as a whole community. And you can decide if I'm accurate, I'm inaccurate, I'm a truth teller or a liar. You have to decide that for yourself.